Love triangles can be dangerous, but add in the possibility of a pregnancy, a murder, small-town gossip, and an inexperienced police department, and you have the perfect recipe for a cold case. Jennifer Harris was a vivacious 28-year-old with fiery red curly hair. Everyone around the community loved her, including 2 men. Jennifer was last seen on Mother's Day of 2002. Her body would be found floating in the Red River a few days later. A lack of resources and experience in the police force and small-town rumor mills destroyed this case from the beginning. It's been 23 years and we still don't know what happened to Jennifer Harris on the banks of the Red River. This case is brought to you by... Behind every true crime story is a shattered life. I have raised awareness for over 300 cases and have worked directly with the family members on many of them. This book highlights 40 case files. Some of them are famous, many of them are obscure. There's missing persons cases, unsolved homicides, serial killers, and more. Check out Shattered today to learn more. This case is one of those archived cases that I wrote about actually in 2018 on my blog. We're talking about the homicide of Jennifer Harris. Now, Jennifer Harris was 28 years old. She had fiery red curly hair, so everyone knew her by her hair. She had a very outgoing personality, and most people liked her and enjoyed being around her. But by the time 2002 rolled around, things were starting to kind of fall apart in her life. She was 28 years old. She had moved away. She had married her childhood sweetheart, and his name was Rob Holman. And then they moved away from the small town of Bonham, Texas, and things started to fall apart. So they ended up in a divorce. She ended up with another man named James Hamilton. And James Hamilton and her, they created a business, and that business fell apart, and then their relationship fell apart, and then all of a sudden, come around Mother's Day of 2002, and Jennifer Harris was coming back home. So she had been in Bonham for a couple of months. She had lived with her grandma at the time, and what people didn't realize in Bonham was that even though she had started a relationship with this other man and all these, she was still actually seeing her ex-husband on the side. Now, during all of these little rendezvous, Rob had gotten a new relationship going, and she had come back home. But behind the scenes, they were still meeting up, and they would meet along different county roads, and then they would go off on their tryst, and then they would come back. And there was only a couple people that actually knew about this, but by the time Mother's Day of 2002 came along, Jennifer had started telling her cousin and a few key people, including Rob, that she was pregnant. She believed that it was his. She was wanting him to break up with his girlfriend and they get back together with her. There was a little bit of questions around if she was actually pregnant or if this was just some sort of thing that she was trying to get Rob back. We'll get into that concept here when we get into the case. But as of Mother's Day, she would be seen at a friend's house. Her name's Christy. She was seen at a friend's house. But by 8 o'clock, she left her friend's house and said that, oh no, it's 8 o'clock. I got to go. Okay, well, just a little bit after that, a lady named Rhonda was walking her dog along County Road 2610, so 2610, however you want to say it, 2610. And that's near Lake Bonham. So Rhonda was walking her dogs, and she seen this green Jeep fly by her, and then she caught up to them when she was walking with her dogs, and the Jeep had pulled over and there was nobody in the Jeep. So in this process of time, within just a few minutes, the dog walker caught up to the Jeep and no one was there. So by the time she walked past the Jeep slightly, it started to rain, so she turned her dogs around and came back. Of course, the Jeep was still there. There was still nobody there. She walked on home. thought nothing of it until she realized the next night the Jeep was still there. And then she started thinking it was odd. But by then, we already had a missing persons report because nobody's seen Jennifer Harris again. So after Christy gave her this recipe that she was wanting, and she left at 8 o'clock, then Rhonda seen her drive by in her green Jeep. After that, nobody has officially seen her since. Now, 6 days later, her body would turn up in the Red River. She would have some damage done to her body, and the autopsies would officially say that it was wildlife animals that had done that to her. But of course, the newspaper reports have to kind of dramatize things. Her uterus was missing, and so they made it out that whoever killed her cut that out of her, which we'll find out later that that's not actually the case. But, you know, in rural counties, sometimes the rumor mill is louder than the truth. And so this is where we're at. So immediately there were two suspects by the police. They had decided on two suspects: Rob Holman, which was her ex-husband, who she was currently having an affair with, whom she claimed she was pregnant by. And then there was James Hamilton, who was the man that really cared about her, and he wasn't really happy that they had broke up. He did not realize that she was still seeing her ex-husband when she was with him. And she up until all of this came to light, he has claimed throughout the whole time he didn't even know she was pregnant. So girls, does that give you a basic rundown? There's so much. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get it all condensed in one basic.
Yeah.
I think I covered all the basics. So
yep.
Let me check the comments here. Justice for all, love red hair, share to the groups. Marion, I got to add Marion to the wheel of names. Tammy, are you keeping track of names for me?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Wait if I missed one, because I'm real bad. Tammy's got that. She's got a little touch of OCD, so she's really good at catching those details. I've got a touch of ADHD, so I don't see details. So she's a good helper. I really appreciate her. So everybody's saying hi. Okay. So here's where things start getting crazy. Now, I titled this "Everything Wrong with the Jennifer Harris Case" because I watched the 48 Hours documentary a few years ago when it came out. I had actually researched this case, and it's actually in my 2018 case files book, Shattered, which is right here, which, you know, just a shameless plug. This book has officially been updated. There's a whole new, there's 20 extra cases in it. This book has been updated recently, but it is actually in this Shattered book. It was part of my 2018 case file series. But there has been some serious updates even since the book was updated. And so this is what I want you guys to realize. When we're talking about these cases, we're talking about real people who have suffered greatly. And so I know last week we was talking, somebody posted a comment and then they went back and said, I hope that didn't sound like I was victim shaming, because that wasn't the intent. And I want us to be able to discuss things as adults in this show. I don't like it when people come on and try to make the victim as a saint, because nobody is. But I also don't want to shame the victim as well. But we want to be truthful and honest when we talk about these things. But we will not allow, you know, anyone that does shame a victim, you know. But we will be talking tonight about some serious things. This woman was in between two men right now, and this woman was kind of toying with both of them. And of course, you have to understand that she had lost her mother. She had to cancer. She had gone through quite a bit of trauma and different things. So she was dealing with a massive bout of depression. She had medication that she was supposed to be on for depression. So we need to understand that although we might say a few things that may sound a little negative, there's no judgment. It's just a matter of we want the truth to be out there, because you can't make a victim into a saint and then expect to solve the case. You have to be honest. Okay, this woman was having affairs with two men at the same time. She was sleeping with two men at the same time. And then she was trying to get back with one. She was kind of pushing the other one away. All of that makes all of that's going to boil over. And unfortunately, this boiled over in the worst possible way on Mother's Day of 2002. Now, I want us to realize that we will be talking about those things. So if that is a trigger for someone, please be aware. I had someone tell me that they read one of my books and they were triggered by it, and somebody watched a video and they're triggered by it. And I'm like, I'm talking about true crime. So if that triggers you, be prepared. This is what my show is about. So, also, I want you guys to know that in the interim time, so there was a podcast put out and 2 years ago, and it was a very lengthy, in-depth podcast. They did a good job. And I can share some links when I write a blog about this. I'll share the links to the podcast so you guys can see it. But then between that time in 2022 and now, the father of Jennifer Harris has taken a drastic step and has committed the S word and is no longer with us. And so I want to take this time to encourage anybody who's watching. If you are having thoughts of hurting yourself, if you're having thoughts of depression and anxiety, if you're having thoughts of harm to yourself, I would like to make sure that you check out the hotline, which is 988, and get some help, because we just lost a 76-year-old Vietnam veteran who had spent 22 years fighting for his daughter's case. And now he is at peace, and he is with his daughter. But I know there's a lot of people on this planet, on this plane of existence, that really miss him. And so if you are having those kinds of thoughts, please check out the national hotline at 988. Talk to a friend, talk to somebody. Don't fight those feelings alone, because we need you here. Okay, so just putting all of that aside, we need you here. So let's jump in. Everything wrong with the Jennifer Harris case. The reason why I titled it that is because you're talking about another rural police department. I have a hard time saying rural. Small town country police department. There you go.
There you go.
So, ours. I have a hard time with ours. You're talking about another small police department who may have not had the funding, may have not had the expertise, may have not had the education, whatever the case may be. But we will find from the very beginning of this case, there has been major mistakes happen that hindered the investigation. Now, every police department makes mistakes. Every police department does the wrong thing. And I don't necessarily think from studying this one that it was necessarily corruption. I think a lot of it was inexperience and probably lack of funding. Girls, what do you think? Do you think it was? I don't see anything that's really conspiracy here. Do you?
No. And I live in a little rural area.
Thank you. Every time I'm just going to point to the screen and you guys say it, because I'm like, that's one word I cannot say. Okay. Okay. Rural. That's one of those things. The more you say it, the worse it sounds. Okay. So first things first, when the Jeep was found, and discovered, it was called into law enforcement. Now, at this point in time, you have law enforcement working on a missing persons case. Okay. You have them interviewing the two men in Jennifer's life. But when a Jeep is called in, a little ways away. For some reason, it doesn't cross and it doesn't click that that is Jennifer's Jeep. So when Rhonda calls in and says, hey, there's a Jeep here that's been here for a couple days, and it's kind of in the road and it's kind of in the way, the police send a tow truck to haul it off. Okay. In reality, that damaged the crime scene. So I never did hear where they hauled it off to. Okay. So for one, they did not investigate the crime scene until a short time later when it finally clicked, oh, hey, that's Jennifer's Jeep, we moved. So they didn't check the crime scene very well where the Jeep was located until a few days later. Now that's a major problem because there's all kinds of evidence that could have been lost there. But they did go back and do the best they could. They unlocked the Jeep. And so we know it was locked. They checked it. It had gas. It had fuel. Everything was working properly. So it wasn't abandoned there. It was shut and locked. Her purse was missing and her phone was it her purse and her purse and her keys were missing. She didn't have a phone. Her purse and her phone. Okay, they did find 2 water bottles in there, and they did take that for DNA, but they said they didn't find anything on them. So I don't know if they didn't have the right resources or if they didn't have the facilities, but I know that water doesn't dilute DNA, so they should have been able to get some kind of DNA off those water bottles, but they didn't. We also know that there was a specific CD that she had bought a couple days before that was no longer in the Jeep. Nobody knows what happened to that. There was a rumor that that wasn't actually her style of music, that it was Rob's style of music. So did she buy it and give it to him as a gift a few days before, or did she do it that night? Rob, to this day, swears he didn't actually see her on that day. Earlier in the morning on Mother's Day, he was on the phone with her for over an hour, according to phone records. And he says that she was upset because she wanted him to spend time with her since she was pregnant with his child and it was Mother's Day. She wanted to come to his parents' house, which she had known them from when she was married to Rob, but Rob refused to let her do that. He wouldn't let her come to the house that he was staying at, which was his girlfriend's or his parents, because he was having his girlfriend with him that day. So they went to Rob and his girlfriend went to her parents and went to his parents, and that was supposedly the way that worked. Now, Rob had a habit of driving around aimlessly, listening to music, driving back roads and everything. And I know a lot of people do that for leisure, for, you know, they find it relaxing. But we also need to realize he was in an old pickup truck, and that it was a thunderstorm out there. So most people don't drive around in a thunderstorm. They don't go out for a relaxing drive during a thunderstorm. So that's one thing. But he was supposedly, he had stayed there and watched a show with his girlfriend, and then he left by 8 o'clock. And then he supposedly drove around for 5 hours and then come home about 1:30, or I think it was that she said. Now, here's the problem. Rob did that supposedly all the time. The girlfriend supposedly did not realize that when he was driving around for hours and hours on, most of the time he was meeting up with Jennifer and hooking up with her. The girlfriend just thought he liked to drive around, and sometimes he did take her on these drives. Well, my question, and the police asked him the same thing. Did you get gas before you left? And he said, no, I got cigarettes. Okay, did you get gas when you got back? No, I did this. Well, if he was traveling for 5 hours in a beat up old pickup truck, those of you that have pickup trucks, beat up old pickup trucks, you know that they most of the time don't get more than 12 miles to the gallon. So if you're driving around for 5 hours, say you're driving slow, because back roads, you don't usually drive 60, you drive 40, 45 on back roads, whatever. If you was driving 45 miles an hour on back roads for 5 hours, you would run out of tank of gas. And so the police were like, why didn't you stop for gas? Now, so he has no body to verify his alibi. So let's jump into the same thing with James Hamilton. Now, James Hamilton still wanted to have a relationship with Jennifer, but she kept pushing him back. Okay. She broke up with him and she kept pushing him back. Well, he was actually at a McDonald's with a friend and his friend's kids. At the time this happened, and this McDonald's was in a town about an hour or so away. Now, when this all came about, that friend verified, hey, we left about 10 minutes after 8 because we looked at, the friend says, I looked at my watch and I was like, oh my gosh, it's after 8. I'm going to have to get my kids home and get them to bed. So they know that they left that McDonald's about 10 minutes after 8. It would have taken him another hour to get to Bonham if that's the direction that he would have gone. He says he didn't. And so they got verification. Now, here comes another thing that happened with law enforcement. Although his friend verified for him, they never did go over to that McDonald's and get the security footage. So even though the McDonald's had security footage that could have completely and solidly solidified James Hamilton's alibi, they didn't go over there. Now, one report says they went over there, but it was 30 days later and the tape had already been erased. Another report said they didn't go over. So either way, they missed another opportunity. So it was the Jeep was moved. That kind of messed things up. They never did get that solid verification of his alibi, which kind of messed things up because they could never completely rule James out because they never did completely validate that alibi. And so although his friend alibied for him, that was as good as they could get. So they never could completely take him out of the equation. So girls, you have anything to add about the moving of the Jeep or the alibi?
No, I mean, I agree 100. Anytime you move anything, you're messing up the scene.
Absolutely. Kimberly says small town doesn't equate incompetent. Crime happens everywhere. Absolutely. Well, and see, this is my thing. Crime happens everywhere. And it seems like some small towns just don't have the funding they need. They don't have the, but they still have the education and they do the best they can, but then there's others. It just seems like they don't know what they're doing. And so I'm trying to give these people the benefit of the doubt, but we will find out that there is one law enforcement officer who has a conflict of interest, and we'll talk about him here in a little bit. Tammy, I haven't heard a lot from you.
Well, I was going to talk about the lead investigator that you were getting ready to talk about.
Okay. All right.
All right. By the way, you're 26 minutes in, so.
Okay. All right. So we want to talk about, they moved the Jeep. They never did establish a real timeline. They never did really ask Rob's girlfriend a whole lot. They asked her if she knew about this or she knew about that. And she claimed she never knew anything about the fact that Rob was with his ex-wife. She claims she didn't know nothing about it. Even though later on she would tell the police that, yes, Jennifer had ended up at the house a time or two, and Jennifer had called at the house several times, and the girlfriend was getting tired of it. She didn't know why Jennifer thought she had a right to be there. And then, of course, if the girlfriend doesn't know that she's still shacking up then with Rob, then she wouldn't realize why she was there. And then, of course, she supposedly didn't know about this pregnancy. Okay, so we are 27 minutes in. What I want you guys to think about, we're going to go to a commercial break here in just a second. The commercials are what helps me make enough income to keep making more videos. So please be patient with our commercials. But before we get there, I want to bring into the fact that there was one police officer who actually was related to one of the suspects. One of the police officers was actually married into the Holman family. And this police officer, everything that was done on camera was very legitimate. But I have a hard time seeing why they allowed this person to still continue in the investigation when this person was related to one of the suspects. Tammy, do you have his name?
Yeah, Kelly Warren.
What was it?
Kelly Warren.
Okay, so Kelly Warren was the one that was married in, wasn't it? It was like married by, was it uncle by marriage or something like that?
Let me see here. He married into his family, so yeah, it was his uncle by marriage.
No.
Wasn't he actually the lead investigator in the case?
I'm not sure if he was the lead, but he did a lot with it for a while.
Right.
So this
and
is
he should have been taken off because that's conflict of interest.
Absolutely. So my thought on it is, okay, the Jeeps move, that's kind of a mess up, but that could just be because they didn't get their their wires weren't crossed right. But then they didn't follow through and verify the alibi of the other suspect when that person could have completely been eliminated. Well, that's kind of suspicious when you realize, okay, well, we don't really want to take away the other suspect. Was that part of the procedure? I mean, did they not want to get rid of the other suspect because, this is all allegedly, but when the investigators related to one of the suspects, and then all of along the way, you never completely cut out the other suspect. You just don't want, I have a hard time thinking that they didn't want Rob to be the only suspect is what the problem was to me. Okay, so we're going to jump in and we're going to be right back after this real quick 1-minute break.
Darkness settled around him as he locked the law office door. Like a lamb led to the slaughter, he knew he was next. He'd stood against the Dixie Mafia's machine in Phoenix City, and he would pay dearly for it. 28 times blood had been shed without justice. Law enforcement, judges, and local politicians were all connected to the criminal organization, and they had sucked the life out of the community for decades. Who was he to think he could escape their grasp? The people tried to make a stand and voted him into office, but Albert Patterson would never take the position. As he walked to his car, a gunman emerged from the shadows. Patterson felt a cold steel barrel shoved against his teeth. The projectile tore through his skull, but the gunman's fury wasn't finished. 2 more bullets ripped through his body as he fell to the ground. The sacrifice bled out on the street as the gunman hurried away. The faint streetlight glinted off the badge on his belt.
All right, thank you guys. We are back. We are talking about all of the things that are wrong with the Jennifer Harris case. And like I said before, we're not blaming anybody. We're just pointing out all of the different discrepancies and asking questions, because by the end of this, by the time you listen to all the stuff out there, you kind of get an idea of who the main suspect is. And then you see all of this circumstantial evidence piled on, and you're like, why hasn't this been taken to the prosecutor? Why hasn't this been pushed forward? There are people in prison for less than what this guy has against him. And yet, and of course that brings back our conversation about Richard Glossop, who has no circumstantial evidence or any real evidence against him at all. So when are they going to do something about this? Now the father is gone. The mother died of cancer before all this happened. The father's gone. So you've got a sister, and I don't know if the grandma's still around, but you've got the family's dying off. And when are they going to follow through with this? This is what I want to know. When are we going to make this stop? When are you going to go ahead and take it in and let a jury decide? Is what I want to know.
And Rob said he was going to take a lie detector test, but he never showed up for that.
Right. So you've got 2 men here. James Hamilton, who showed up, took a lie detector test, passed it with flying colors. You've got Rob Holman, who said he would, but never did show up. You've got Rob's girlfriend, who showed up for a lie detector test and did not pass it. Okay. And she said she had anxiety and was on medications for anxiety and used that as an excuse for not passing. Okay, so we've got all these different strange things, and then you've got Rob saying strange things about different things when the family's gathering, trying to figure out what to do. You've got all kinds of odd behavior. And then when her body was found 6 days later, all of a sudden, Rob stopped being so helpful. While she was a missing person, Rob was there almost when people didn't want him around, but he was there. He was helpful with police. He even did a ride around with police to show them where he supposedly went driving that night. And he said he actually ran into Jennifer Harris at an intersection. She turned one way and he turned the other. But all of a sudden, once her body's found, he decided to lawyer up. He decided he's not talking to nobody anymore. And then he didn't follow through and do his lie detector test like he said he would. But he has also said some strange things. So before her body was found, I guess it was after it was found, but before everything went public. You know, there was nothing in the news about how she was found yet. He asked the father if she was naked. And her body was found completely naked.
That's a red flag question right there.
No underwear, no pants, nothing. Why would you ask that?
And why would they not interrogate him for asking that? Because that's a seriously red flag.
Okay, so he asked, was she naked? Okay. Well, then the newspapers caught wind of part of this, and the rumor mill went crazy and said that her uterus had been removed. So they were like, if she was pregnant, the dad did that. Okay. I could contend that if that was actually the case, a vindictive girlfriend could do that too. Okay?
Yeah.
I don't think they should have had 2 suspects. I think they should have had 3.
They left her out so much, and I felt like she's right in there.
Absolutely. I mean, they all 3 should have been a persons of interest.
Yes.
In my book, because who has the most motive? If Rob didn't want the child and offered to pay for an abortion, like he said he did in the police interview, then maybe he could have done it. If she found out about it and it's like, you're not taking my man, she could have done it, and then you've got James who says he wants her back and you can't have it, so here we go. I say you have 3 persons of interest, not 2. After 22 years, nobody's ever said that but me. I think you actually should have had 3 persons of interest at this time. Now, they said in the rumor mill that the uterus was taken. Okay. It was not taken by human hands. There was damage on the backside. And there was more than just that. There was other organs and things that had been damaged. I'm trying to be circumspect. I don't want to trigger anybody. But it was done by wildlife, and it was not done surgically with a knife or anything. It was wildlife, and there were other things damaged and missing. So it wasn't just that. But that persisted for years and years and years. Okay. So all the way up till 2018. So this case was from 2002 to 2018. The very first thing that caught my eye was the headline that said her uterus was missing. Okay. So that was actually still part of the big headlines and the big rumor mill as of 2018. Bling says, "Can I get where this ask where this happened? I must have missed it. It's Bonham, Texas." And so we want to realize that the rumor mill can really destroy cold cases. And that's how I labeled my first blog post that I wrote about Jennifer all those years ago, was when the rumor mill destroys cold cases. You're welcome, Bling. And so this is where I feel like what's happened here. You've got small town gossip, and then you've got a police department who may not have all the resources they need, and everything's kind of falling apart. And so the autopsy also showed something that nobody talked about. They think, okay, well, what was their cause of death? The coroner ruled it as a homicidal violence, I think is the way they phrased it, homicidal violence. And she had an injury to her eye. There was an injury to her eye. It looked as if it was swollen almost shut. It looked as if somebody, maybe if she had taken blunt force trauma to the eye. But then when a body's in the water, and again, I'm trying to be circumspect, the weight and the way your body works, you usually roll over onto your stomach, even if you don't enter the water that way. And then because your arms and legs and everything's heavier, so you will be face down. Okay. The water after 6 days does its own damage to the human body. But the eye was different than everything else. And so the investigators that have been working on it recently contend that she may have taken blunt force trauma to the eye. Now, and so that is something else that was never taken into account.
Yeah, because she could have hit rocks.
Right. They never took those into account. Now, her laptop, she kept a personal diary on her laptop. Now, it was signed into police evidence, and then all of a sudden, they sent it off to the FBI to be analyzed. When it comes back, it's signed back into evidence, and yet it disappears. Nobody knows what happened to that laptop. And so then you're thinking, okay, we've got another evidence locker that loses things. But then, Cricket, I will let you tell them. I'm going to get a drink. I'll let you tell them about why evidence could disappear from this case.
Oy.
The state of their evidence lockers.
Wet. So boxes get wet, the mildew destroys evidence. Also, things were mishandled.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying intentionally, but it happens.
Right.
And yeah, when things get wet, there's nothing you can do with it.
Right.
It's garbage.
Right.
It's sad to say that, but it's garbage.
Right. Well, they were kept in these little pods that weren't waterproof outdoors, out behind the police station, and these pods were not kept and maintained, and they leaked. And so, even though this case has been going on for 22 years now, there is actually very little paperwork and things that hasn't been damaged. And so you've got water damage, and you've got things that are just flat out destroyed. And so,
yeah. And I wonder what, like we've, I'm sure you've done it too. Most people have in sometime in their life buried time capsules,
mm-hmm.
put them and then dig them up years later, and everything's fine.
Yeah. So I don't understand why they wouldn't keep that in pristine condition, because your evidence is in there. But like you also heard one law officer say, they solved every case that came to them up until this case. And so they were very, the beginning officers on this, they were very confident this is going to be solved right away. And I think that may have knocked them off their game a bit, because they're like, oh, we're going to get this one because we've got every other one. And so I don't think they were prepared for a 22-year long haul, And so I think that's where I think that could have messed with them a little bit.
Yeah.
Bling said, did you just say the evidence was stored outside? I'm hard of hearing. Sometimes I need confirmation. Oh, Bling, that's fine. Yes, it was stored outside in a storage pod that leaked water. So that's where the evidence was kept. What was you going to say, Cricket?
With them having such a good record like that, it's so easy to lose focus. It's like a winning football team. They win so many years in a row. Yeah. And then one thing can throw them off that they don't, and that's the game they're going to lose.
Right. And I think that played into some of this here. Yeah. I think some of it all played in together. But then, Tammy, have you got anything to say? Because I don't feel like I've heard much of you from tonight.
Well, when did the thousands of files were deleted from her laptop? Like 5 days after she went missing, there was literally thousands of files deleted.
Thank you. I missed that part. That is something else that we are not blaming anybody, but we're saying somebody had her laptop, because 5 days when the FBI got her laptop, they said they found evidence that 5 days after she was reported missing, she wasn't found until 6 days later. 5 days after she was reported missing, somebody had deleted 1,000 or more files from her laptop. Okay. So somebody had her laptop in between the time she went missing and the time her body was found. So who had that laptop? Also, I never did find out where the laptop, where did the police come up with the laptop? Where did they find her laptop? Was it in the Jeep? Was it in her grandma's house where she was living? Where did they get the laptop from? I never did hear where they picked that up from. That would be some key information.
Yeah, it would be.
You know,
and
but yeah, so somebody had that laptop and deleted a bunch of files. Yeah, basically deleted her diary off of it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to her to be able to get into it.
Right. Somebody close. Yeah. Unless they had some great hacker, which I doubt. But it's more likely that somebody who knew her could figure out her password.
We have the 2 fires, the 2 suspicious.
Right? Yeah. That's where I was going next.
In a close proximity, too.
Yeah. So this last investigator who is really pushing on this case, he worked on the case. He came onto the case in 2009, and then he moved on and retired from the police force, and now he does private investigating and different things like that. He works for another company or something. He is still fighting on this case, trying to get somebody to do something and trying to investigate and push and push and push. And he figured up, according to the rate of the water flow and how the body decomposes in water, how far she would have floated downriver in 6 days. And they calculated that up, and she must have gone into the water approximately 2 miles upstream. Now, 2 miles upstream was a very unusual sight. This was one of the few places that you could actually access the Red River. Okay. All along the Red River was private posted property with fences and everything else that you couldn't get into. Okay. But there was one place that was private property, but there was no fences and nobody really lived there. It was kind of run down. And on the front end of the property was an old shack that didn't have no electricity, nothing to it. It was just a rundown place. Most people, locals, would access the river there. Technically, it was owned by somebody. Nobody there maintained it. Nobody paid any attention to it.
And it was commonly used. It was commonly used as an access point to the river. Too.
Everybody, all the locals, that's what they used to get in the river. Now, here's the strange thing. When Jennifer Harris's body was found, she had no clothes, nothing, no socks, nothing. Okay. But she did have a strange blue mud on her. Now, one of the only few places that strange blue mud came from was right around that shack where they got into the river. Right there at that access point was that strange blue mud. Okay, so that links her to that place. Okay, next thing is right there was an access point. That was where everything was. But then the very same night that she goes missing, before anyone knows she's technically missing, okay, nobody really called her in missing until the next day. Okay, so we're talking real late at night, Mother's Day night, wee hours of the 13th the next morning. That shack goes up in flames.
And it had been raining, so it had to be set.
It had been raining. There had been thunderstorms all night long. So the fact that it was raining, the fact that it had been raining, the fact that there was no electricity to the house, the fire department went to that fire and they said it was arson 100%. There's no way that thing should have set off. It was not struck by lightning, nothing like that. And then they literally, while they were looking at that one, they were called away because another place up the road, a few miles away, it was on fire. So they ran to that one. And they were trying to save that one because the shack, there was no way it could be saved. So they literally just, they made a barrier so nothing else would catch fire, and they let the shack burn to the ground. The police department, the fire department made the ruling, it's too far gone, we're not even going to try, let it burn to the ground. Okay. I contend that the second fire was a distraction from the first fire. The first fire was the cover up. Nobody ever found her purse. And the keys to the Jeep were found a short distance from that cabin in the ditch by a neighbor a few days later. Okay. They found a Jeep key. They call the cops and say, hey, there is a Jeep key in the ditch in front of my house. I bet it's to do with that case you guys are working on. If you want to come get it, I've got to leave. I'll leave it on the porch for you. By the time the police get there, the Jeep key's gone. So, who would know that there is a Jeep key on the porch other than the guy who put it on the porch and the police department?
Yep.
Can anybody give me some guesses? I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here. I'm not trying to be judgmental to the police. I'm not trying to say anybody was doing anything wrong. But who else knew about that key? There's
a woman, maybe.
I'm saying there was somebody in the law enforcement who was actively working this case who had a reason to not want that key found.
Yep, the one who shouldn't have been on the case in the first place.
Perhaps. And again, we're saying allegedly because we don't know. And that person is deceased now, so there's no way of even questioning that person now. But here's the problem. That person, just by being on the case, whether that person ever did anything wrong or not, and I'm not saying they did, but by allowing that person to be on the case, they make everything suspect from then on. Every time something goes wrong, it makes it suspect. So when you get into a court of law, the defense will say, they could say, well, that guy, maybe that police guy was corrupt. Maybe he took the key. Maybe he destroyed the laptop. Maybe he did this. Maybe he did that. Whether he ever did or not, it looks bad on the police department. And since the key goes missing, it makes that connection, and everybody wants to run in and say, well, maybe that cop did it. And you can't say he didn't, because who else was going to know? The girlfriend wouldn't know that the key was found. The only person that would know the key was found is the person who found it in the ditch out in front of their house and the law enforcement officer they called on the phone. So whatever happens by having a family member of one of the suspects on the case, active on the case, you are destroying your own case because it looks bad, and anything that goes wrong from now on could be blamed on that guy. So it's not good practice to have him involved in the case at all, just because it ruins your case. Whether that guy ever did and I'm not saying he ever did anything wrong. I'm just saying it looks bad. Do you guys agree with me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see. 2 fires. Let's see. So I've been researching about the trauma around her eye since you mentioned it. If there was bruising present, it had to be there before she died.
Yeah.
Yes. The eye trauma, bruising only happens if there's blood flow. Absolutely. See, that's the thing. I'm saying
we don't know.
They got into a fight in that shed. My theory is they went somewhere to hook up, and it was raining and storming, so they went there inside that shed to hook up. They got into a fight. No telling what happened. Rob had gotten violent with her in the past when he thought that she was cheating on him with James Hamilton. He punched a hole in the wall. Now, James Hamilton had been accused of being violent with her and with his ex-wife. So I'm not saying Rob was more violent than James. I'm just saying Rob had been violent in the past towards her. And now she's putting pressure on him to tell his girlfriend about the baby. And he doesn't want to. He doesn't want her to have the baby. She's going to have it anyways, if she's even pregnant. And so I'm saying if that was actually a legitimate thing, they had gotten into a fight, a physical altercation of some sort, and then he either drowned her in the water or he choked her out or anything like that. Now, they say there wasn't any water in her lungs, but that is totally acceptable. You can still drown with water not in your lungs, because your esophagus can literally constrict itself so hard that you can lose air, and it's a dry drowning is what that's called. It's called a dry drowning. And so that could have happened, and she could have ended up drowning in the water, or she could have blacked out, whatever the case may be, and she ended up in the water.
And also the fact that she showed up at her ex-husband's girlfriend's house.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's something right there. Mm-hmm. You know, if I was dating somebody and his ex showed up at my house, there would be a problem.
Yeah. And see, this is where I feel like whatever her intentions were, she was fighting with fire. And to me, the idea of a stranger coming and doing this to her, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But to me, it's somebody she knows. And to me, unlike everybody else, I was going back and researching again. I'm thinking there's 3 people of interest in my book, not just 2. You can't tell me that woman was so naive that she didn't realize what Rob was doing for 5 hours when he was driving around and never had to buy gas, And then the girlfriend starts showing up at her house. See, Rob was living with his new girlfriend. He didn't have a place of his own. So she was showing up at her house and calling her house. And no, if there was no physical connection between Rob and his ex-wife, then no, the ex-wife had no reason to be there. And so I'm saying I don't think that woman was that naive. I think she knew something was going on. I don't know what her level of knowledge was or her level of involvement in things were, but I don't think she was that naive. I think she knew something was going on.
And okay. You brought out earlier that they ended up getting married 8 months later.
Yes, I found that was odd too.
That's
during the very first, during the very first police interview. The very first police interview, they asked Rob if the girlfriend knows that he was still sleeping with his ex-wife, and he said no. Does your girlfriend know about Jennifer being potentially pregnant? No. Are you planning on marrying this girl? He said, well, I'd like to, but not anytime soon. Well, then all of a sudden, 8 months later, they're married. And I'm thinking, yeah, and you cannot force a wife to testify against her husband.
Exactly.
So whether that's a coincidence or not, I don't believe in investigations. There's such a thing as coincidence.
No, there isn't.
I think there's purpose behind most of it. And so, but okay, well, guys, that's the overview as I have it of the Jennifer Harris case. I do know that there are still people that's fighting to get more publicity for this case. There's still people out there fighting, trying to get the prosecutor to take this before a jury. And so the more we can talk about it, the more we can share it, make sure and do so. We need to get this case out to a bigger audience. But don't forget the dad. Don't forget that precious Vietnam veteran of a father. To me, I've watched and studied so many cases. I've written about over 300 cases. I've studied 500 cases or more. When I heard that, I actually stopped and cried. I've seen horrible things. I've talked to families that are just coming apart at the seams. I have seen so many gruesome photos, just make your stomach turn. But when I heard about that Vietnam veteran dying in front of the police station, I broke down and cried in my kitchen while I was trying to wash dishes. If you are having those kinds of feelings, there is help out there. There's people that care, and we need you here. Okay? So whatever you're going through, please call 988. Please get some help. Don't go through it alone. Don't fight it alone. And get some help. There's people that cares. Today's episode is brought to you by Bones Coffee Company. You can forget about boring coffee when you drink Bones Coffee. Not only do they offer a variety of flavors such as strawberry cheesecake and maple bacon, they are a family-owned company that puts great detail not only in their coffee, but in the artwork that comes on each individual bag. Bones Coffee has a coffee club that will deliver your favorite coffee to your door every month. If that wasn't enough, they also have some amazing swag to offer. Check out Bones Coffee Company today. I'll have my affiliate links in the show notes for you.